Welcome to the debate. I'm your host, Maqbool, with you at PTV World. Today's day is an important and historic one for Pakistan because, of course, the much-awaited national security policy has been released to the public. A shorter version of the NSP has been published today. And this, of course, as we've discussed earlier, is a very, very important policy and a much-needed one for Pakistan. The Prime Minister today unveiled this national security policy. And as discussed before, after it was approved by the Federal Cabinet on the 28th of December, this particular document focuses on an overall and all-encompassing security policy for the citizens of Pakistan. It is said to be citizen-centric. It is said to be developed after full consideration of all the stakeholders, after a civil-military consensus, and with a focus on the economic security. The Prime Minister also reiterated that before this, the governments have not focused on economic security and have not had a plan, but have only been focusing on the military security of the country. And now that this NSP has been launched and this has given a direction to the people of the country and to how to proceed with regards to security of a citizen, it is an important document to be looked at, to be pondered over and see how it's going to actually reflect and impact the people of Pakistan and take the country forward. The national security policy, of course, is a document that needs to be discussed, and so we're going to be doing that in our show today. But what's important is that our show also has something very different for you planned today. We have an exclusive interview of the National Security Advisor, Mr. Moeed Yusuf, taken by none other than our very own Mr. Farrukh Pitafi. He recorded this exclusive interview earlier today, and we're going to be showing this to you on our show, and after that we'll have a little bit of discussion on it. So let's go ahead with our exclusive interview with Moeed Yusuf.
Hello and welcome to the debate. I'm Farrukh Pitafi. Since you have been watching this program, we have repeatedly questioned that Pakistan, although it is called a national security state, we don't see a national security document. And that has been a problem for quite some time. And if you remember, I've questioned past 4 national security advisors about that. And every time we were told that there were some systemic problems. But finally, it seems that that moment has arrived when we have a national security policy in our hand. And what does it entail? We are going to talk about that. Today, we are going to question not only this document, question about it, but we are going to also talk about its sociology. And then we are going to try to operationalize it as well, just to understand where we stand when it comes to implementation of this document. In order to help us understand these issues, we are joined by the National Security Advisor of the country, Dr. Moeed Yusuf. Dr. Saab, thank you very much for your time. Dr. Saab, before we start and we talk about this document, let me first ask you about your own institution and its organogram. How does this function? I ask this because in the past we have seen that the previous national security advisors used to complain that there was no ecosystem to support their
I think it's fair. I think it is fair. Frankly, when I came in, that was one of the first things I realized. Because it's we've had national security advisors since 1969, right. On and off. The first one was Major General Ghulam Umar, who's actually Asad Umar Saab's father. Yeah. But then sometimes the office was there and sometimes it wasn't. But the paraphernalia was never created. Yeah. In 2014, Sartaj Aziz Saab, when he was the national security advisor and advisor on foreign affairs, right. He set up this division. Mm-hmm. Had a full-fledged sort of organogram built, etc. But still, it was sort of hanging in the air in some ways. And what I realized was one of the tasks of any NSA is to coordinate key strategic issues for the Prime Minister or the executive. Right. In our case, that function was very weak, and it was weak because the buy-in wasn't there. Okay. Because
institutional buy-in.
Institutional buy-in, because the NSA is not, again, it's not in the memory, it's not a permanent role. Right. So in 2021, last year, we actually corrected one imbalance. We had the National Security Division, but there was no office of the National Security Advisor.
Okay, so it was a virtual office.
It was a virtual office. National Security Advisor used to head the National Security Division. But in this government, the courts actually ruled that advisors can't have executive power.
Okay.
So that created this problem where you have a division, but you can't have executive power. So how do you run the division? So now Pakistan has something called the Office of the National Security Advisor, which is not part of the division, it's part of the Prime Minister's office.
Right.
So I am part of the Prime Minister's office.
Right.
The division itself is an independent division like a ministry is, and it operates as the secretariat both for the National Security Committee and for my office.
Right.
So now the paraphernalia is given by the division and the authority comes from the Prime Minister. So I think that imbalance is removed.
Right, but still the way you are actually defining it, it is quite a workaround, right? You have to actually go to three departments.
Because it's not a constitutional post. You know,
why can't you create it accordingly?
I mean, I think that's up to the Prime Minister if he wants to go in that direction.
Prime Minister or Parliament? Because it is the job of Parliament to legislate.
Yeah, I think if it has to be ultimately done, it will be the Parliament, but of course the executive has to, you know, but functionality, I think that problem doesn't exist at this point. The other thing, keep in mind, the National Security Division has the mainstay of the division is something called the Strategic Policy Planning Cell.
Right.
This is the Prime Minister's think tank. It has experts from different sort of areas of national security, a small team that spearheads all policy analysis and intellectual work.
Right.
That nerve center reports directly to the Office of the National Security Advisor.
And where does it actually exist?
It exists in the National Security Division.
Right.
So physically, the division and my office are both in the Prime Minister's office. So physically we're all the same.
Right.
But the reporting lines, because of the legality of it and the efficiency of it, the intellectual input comes directly to the advisor, and the advisor then processes it for the Prime Minister, and all the administrative support, all the secretarial support comes from the division.
Right. Last time I was here and I interviewed you, I remember the title of your office was quite a mouthful. This time it is not. NSA is a shorthand, and it
I actually keep both titles still.
And congratulations on that.
I actually should tell you why. Because we've tried very hard. It's not about the title. Strategic policy planning, which is part of my that is a separate function from the advisory role. I think we have to understand this point.
Right.
In Pakistan, a lot of times, even advisors, we end up doing crisis management, file work and bureaucracy. Strategic policy planning requires real intellectual thought and input.
Right.
So I didn't want to lose that, because that's really the forte. How do you advise? You can advise based on whims or on real analysis. And our structure actually is one of those in the government which does real scientific analysis as political science goes to give input to the Prime Minister.
Right. And my concern when I brought up this title or titles was that the way everything is structured, don't you think that it is prone to a lot of pressures, and someday somebody comes in and all this mechanism disappears? I'm talking about the next government.
Well, I mean, I think it can, but you know.
But I need some kind of assurance as a citizen of this country, because you are doing a great job. And then what you have created, this document, Dr. Saab, actually flows from your office. While the PM has signed it, but as long as your post is not there, nobody is going to be reminded of this efficacy.
You see, countries, states and nations decide their priorities themselves. If we have decided on a priority which is a national security policy, and if there is a setup that has to ensure its implementation, I think it's a no-brainer, then that setup has to be empowered. But when I sit here and say this, you know, it may come across as I want to empower my office. That's not the point. The point is that we have had a perennial problem of lack of policy continuity. So if we don't have that apparatus available that is going to ensure continuity, not only of this policy but generally, I think there's a problem. But let me also point a finger at myself and say, if I leave this office tomorrow and I haven't convinced the Prime Minister and the system that there is real value added in this office, then maybe it won't last. But I can tell you fairly confidently that it would take a fairly poor judgment on the part of anybody to decide that Pakistan's federal government doesn't need a proper coordinating role
All right.
in the system.
And
That was the weakness, and that's really what
based on every evidence you have seen in Pakistan's history, do you think that there is dearth of that kind of problem?
No, coordination is one of our biggest problems.
No, no, not coordination, judgment.
You see, I came into this office and I was told by many, it won't work.
Yeah.
Because there are too many pulls and pushes. It sits in the middle of civilian and military sort of pillars of the state and what have you.
Right.
And I just used to say one thing to people. If this country won't have consensus on national security, it won't have consensus on anything. And if I fail to create that consensus, then I don't deserve to be in the job. So Alhamdulillah, I don't know, where we are, but the team here, this national security policy, I think is evidence. But let me say, any national security advisor, I was in the US for a number of years, I saw that's a much more well-oiled and structured machinery.
Yeah, it is.
Without the Prime Minister's 200% support, this couldn't have happened. But I must also tell you, the kind of support my office has gotten from the military leadership, without that it can't function, because the whole purpose is to coordinate and coalesce.
Right.
So till that is there, I think we will inshallah go from strength to strength as a country. But now it's not about the office, it's not about Moeed Yusuf, it's not about my success, it's really about this document you have in your hand to make sure we implement it and don't leave it just as a piece of paper.
Right, and this document is actually a miracle work. I say this because not only it is the first national security policy of the country in 74 years, it is in the region, if I'm correct. It is the first one which is made public also.
Yeah.
So what led you to actually release it in public?
The Prime Minister. He actually wanted the whole document released, and I had to convince him that, there are certain things.
There's no government without secrets.
Well, look, I mean, it's not about a Pakistani citizen should know everything. I truly believe that. But there's a whole world which can interpret and misinterpret and take meanings out of things which are not needed. Then there's the implementation framework. Who has to do what on what timeline, how. That's not sort of, I think, something that goes into public anyways. But knowing the Prime Minister, you won't be surprised. And, at one time, actually, he told me, what is there that you're trying to hide? And I said, I'm not trying to hide. We're just trying to make sure that, we get the implementation part is not compromised just because putting it out. But look, the document we've put out is not a 2-page summary. It's not just pro forma. It's a 50-60 page document.
62 or 64,
lays out the entire sort of spectrum of things it covers, gives you the clarity of our direction. But then you can imagine, I mean, detailed threat assessments and other things are never made public.
Right. Let me correct myself, because I have to first fact check. It is 48 pages. I saw the soft copy, which was 62. But
I think the initial part is in Roman numerals. It's about 55 or so.
Yeah. But regarding this document as well, walk us through how it was created and what were the moving parts that actually led to consensus.
The first thing I must keep repeating, I've said it I don't know how many times, this isn't my document. This isn't even today's National Security Division's document. This is Pakistan's document. This has to be above all politics. This has to be. Otherwise, then, how do you move forward? Many have worked on this. Our former national security advisors, the federal secretaries of the National Security Division. But this is the kind of document where every ministry division, etc., needed to be on board with every the respective parts of the document that are relevant to them for this to go through. We didn't veto anything. We had to get consensus made, and you can imagine with these kind of umbrella documents, every line somebody can draw a different meaning. So even to the day that the cabinet approved it, I know that morning I got a call from somebody saying, can we reconsider this line? I mean, it was to that, and this is the very top of the government I'm talking about. So that's the level. But we went through, in 2014, much before me, of course, they did open houses with citizens in various cities, average citizens got their input. The process then, went on and on. Sometimes it was slow, sometimes it was okay. We created a drafting committee in 2019, various ministries, military stakeholders to draft the document. Then in earnest from December 2019 to now, we've touched about 600 people, experts, civil society,
Right.
a lot of university students, because we wanted to get the youth involved.
Yeah.
And then multiple rounds with the federal government, etc. So it was exhaustive, but it wasn't enough.
Mhm.
I mean, I think you'll still get many genuine voices saying, but they should have asked us more, more perhaps. Parliament is already, the opposition has said it.
Yeah, I want to actually talk about Parliament also.
Sure.
But before that, I understand that all this process went into it, right? All this happened.
Yeah, also Farrukh, keep in mind, this may not sound right, but I have to be honest, these kind of documents which are fairly technical and umbrella, beyond a point you don't benefit too much from going to the grassroots, because
Right.
you keep getting the same message again and again. What you really need to do is put meat on those bones and understand how to ensure human security.
Okay.
So you need much more of policy input in these kind of
Right.
documents. That's why we focused on those areas.
Right, but you're saying that this document is top to bottom. I mean, it is going to trickle down to the grassroots, right?
Yeah, I mean, grassroots
Because
were-
everybody is going to actually act on it. If I am
Yes.
a tehsildar, I
Yeah,
still
think-
am
I
a
think-
part of it.
Yeah, I think it is, in that sense it is top down. I think that's fair.
Right, right. Okay, regarding revision of this document, now it is passed, now it is policy. When do you revise it again?
One mandatory review every year,
Okay,
and a mandatory review anytime a new government comes, because we want to make sure that whenever there's a government after elections,
yeah.
they get an opportunity to see if they want to adjust the vision in any way.
Right. Now, the concern I have is that so far we have heard the parliament, especially the opposition, saying that they were not consulted. So, how do you answer that?
Policy making is an executive function in Pakistan.
Right. But you're talking about
Yeah,
something
but-
which is larger than
Yeah,
life,
but let
and
me
you
explain.
won't buy in.
Yeah, I absolutely do. Voluntarily, we decided in the process to go to the National Security Committee of the Parliament, which is created by the Parliament. I assume because national security is sensitive, so it's not the entire Parliament, but they have about 30 people, with all parties, leaderships and prominent politicians in it, which is the forum where such things go.
Yeah.
We took it there on the 6th of December. Unfortunately, the opposition boycotted, and not because of the policy. I think this was more about the politics that goes on. That said, I said it this morning too at the launch. I want to be questioned.
Yeah.
I want people, the average citizen, anybody who wants to hear it, critique it, because that input would help us as we evolve the implementation of this document and otherwise. The Senate Defense Committee, by the way, headed by Senator Mushaid Hussain, called me in last week for an in-camera hearing. We went, we presented. They were all very appreciative. The opposition was there. I'm very grateful. Tomorrow, anybody and everybody who wants to call us, we are mandated, we are bound.
Right.
So we are more than happy to do that.
But I want to understand how the exchange takes place. Is it that you go, you explain, and they say, okay, you have done a great job, thank you
Yeah,
very
they
much.
ask
Go.
questions, they critique, and then
No,
they say,
of course. But do they also provide you with some feedback?
Yes.
That you are going to incorporate
the
tomorrow?
Defense Committee did. So
Okay.
this document is now final and policy,
Okay.
but as we review over the year, it's not that we will review 12 months from now on one day. We'll just keep doing this. If we get good input, which helps us better implement something, we'll incorporate it. I mean, we can't change the document, but that doesn't stop us from doing better in terms of implementation in the execution of it.
Right. For 1 year, you are not going to change the document.
That's correct.
Right.
The wording of the document.
Right. Now, I understand this is a policy and you're right in saying that it is an executive function, right? But usually wherever you go, there are 3 tiers. The first tier is a framework that has to be constitutional or legal. The second is policy. And then there is a strategy paper. Is there a possibility that tomorrow, day after tomorrow, you actually create these 3 tiers and you ensure that this documentary stays as long as the government is there, but you have a strategy
Look,
paper?
the first one is a consensus issue.
Yeah.
And as I said, anybody and everybody who invites us, we will go, or demands frankly, as the parliament goes, we'll go and present and get whatever feedback we can, whatever debate can happen in the intellectual circles, media, I would love it, frankly. This is my personal view, but that's great. We should have critique because that's how the consensus becomes stronger. The only one thing I'll tell you is I don't accept is when people come and talk about, oh, you said this in the policy, but yesterday this happened. This policy is not about what Pakistan is today or what it was yesterday. This is where we want to go. That's our future direction.
How soon?
I mean, some things should happen tomorrow, some things should happen in a year, some things 5 years. I'll just tell you, I mean, today after this launch, some of the meetings with the Prime Minister, unrelated, other things, people actually raise this issue, that your policy has been approved, it's saying this, why are you talking about this? Okay. That's how you develop processes.
Right.
Right? But your third tier, I want to mention that. We will not develop a strategy paper, and I'll tell you why. This policy is the umbrella document. Right. Now, below this, our sectoral policies that have any link with national security should start to link up with this vision. So when they are reviewed, food security policy, water security policy, defense policy, we don't have one, that should be built now and linked to the vision of this document. Right. And then those sectors or those ministries or those provinces, they will develop the strategy papers because the execution is their role.
So is it not going to create too many moving parts?
No.
Because so many departments are there.
Yeah, but
they're going to create so much.
That's why the National Security Division exists as the coordinating body. Right. It's the Ministry of Defense that has to produce and the defense policy, strategy and implement it. Right. Commerce has to do the strategic trade framework and on and on. We are just here to work with them, to coordinate, review the progress, take it to the Prime Minister. Where there are hurdles, it's our responsibility to help.
Right. Now let us finally talk about the policy itself. How have you organized the entire structure? What is the core value that we are looking at?
Security of Pakistan's average citizen equals how secure Pakistan is.
All right.
To get to that, economic security has to be at the core.
Right.
Because unless we have money, unless we have resources, we cannot distribute adequately to our human security and to our traditional security, both of which are under-resourced. Right? Some of the principles we lay out, national cohesion, diversity has to be championed. Okay. Unity in diversity. Right. We talk about economic security. Our key issue is financial insolvency. Right. We don't have resources, we go and borrow, economic sovereignty gets compromised, foreign policy can't be independent.
Right.
Right?
Can I ask you to step back for a second and let us start from the very start. You said that the safety and security of an individual citizen and economic security, that is the linchpin here. How do you define that?
Two things, physical security and safety.
Right.
And livelihoods, secure livelihoods. Okay. Those two things have to be together with dignity. So these are the three things we've laid out.
Right. And do you quantify that as well? For example, there is a question of nutrition.
Not in the public version, but nutrition and food security are in human security. Right. So we cover that there. Yeah. Food security is a part of it.
At this moment, we are not going into sectoral side. I'm just talking about the linchpin.
So food security is there. Yeah. Food security is absolutely there.
Broader stroke, right?
Yes.
So you quantified that as well.
Food security. And population.
And population.
Because ultimately it's the number of mouths you have to feed which determine how much resource base you need.
Have we ever actually worked on a number that is affordable or sustainable when it comes to population?
I'm not sure, frankly. I don't know if that number exists in that sense. What we do know is what resource quantum of resource we need to feed the population that is projected.
Yeah, somebody will have to tabulate that.
I'm sure it actually on the economic side, I'm sure it exists, but I'm not.
Yeah, I kept on actually covered the economics as well, so I haven't seen that kind of document.
It's a fair point.
Yeah, but regarding the overall situation, you said diversity has to be championed. How do you champion diversity in a country where we have obsession with the unitary system? Everybody wants to actually centralize everything.
Actually, after the 18th Amendment, it's the opposite.
Yeah, but today, even the Prime Minister, let me give you an example, mentioned the national curriculum. And I understand that this country has many languages, it has many cultures, and everything is actually going to have its individuality when it comes to grassroots level. So we do tend to have centralization, right?
Well, I mean, I think both can go together, but the basic point is education can teach you to exacerbate fault lines or to come together as a nation.
Yeah.
Now, whatever that curriculum is a separate debate, but I think it's a key tool. Cultural heritage is a key tool. Your national public discourse, all of you, what you do from 7:30 p.m. every night, doesn't help.
You are not helping your case.
I know I'm not, but you know, those are all part of this.
Yeah.
So if you ask me, I want everybody in any position in Pakistan to now see that we have a clear vision. How can they contribute to achieve that? Because one thing I can guarantee you, for whatever new government, this government, whatever, nobody is going to challenge the direction laid out. Because privately, every person and party has come to us and confirmed this is exactly what we agree with.
You're talking about institutions, right?
No.
That they're not going to challenge it.
No, opposition, civil society,
My institution, media.
Yeah, I don't think you will challenge it. I think there can be debates.
I totally get what you're saying, and I really laud your, optimism. But here's the problem: in order for somebody to actually question a policy on merit, they have to first understand it, right? And let's be honest, you come across a lot of anchors and journalists, right? You tell me, do you think that there is that kind of capacity to accompany?
You've got to tell me, it's your industry. My point is very simple.
But I'm a citizen, right? And you are actually my national security.
If there isn't, then we should develop it. It's no excuse. If you think that your industry is not at the capacity as it should be, we should develop it. You know, if I'm sitting in my office and I see that I have a weakness, you know, one of the things we mentioned in the policy, which is, by the way, very bold for a country, we say we are going to be introspective.
Right.
If we make mistakes, we own them and we learn from them. We don't pretend that, you know, we don't have any weakness. So everybody should do that. And in the case of media, it's a key linchpin. So I really hope that people absorb this. They critique it, but they move the conversation in the right direction.
So let us take it in another direction, and that is strategic communication. Right? You're going to communicate to us. You are doing it right now. But when you don't have this, the media doesn't have this capacity to convey it, how will you actually do it?
It's funny, but the number of articles written on the national security policy.
Is it funny or honest also? Objective?
What is funny is I was going to tell you that till yesterday, there are, I think, about 30, 40, 50 articles written on the national security policy. And, you know, people sent it to me, and I was just in the lighter vein asking everybody, you haven't read the policy. So what are you commenting on? Just read it, and then we'll have a conversation. So yeah, maybe that's true. But look, I mean, Farrukh, we have to move in a direction where we can overcome our weaknesses and cash in on our strengths. So just because something is not where it should be today doesn't mean it can't be tomorrow. If we lose that optimism, I'm afraid there are too many things that will bog us down.
Yeah, my humble question was regarding building capacity, right? And there has to be somebody who is going to build.
I'm trying very hard not to talk about media, because I'll let you do that.
No, but this is a serious question. Yesterday, when the Parliament was passing a finance supplementary bill, there was speculation going on, and all of a sudden we thought that the media somehow is taking pleasure in the idea that there might be some infighting.
Media's capacity, if you talk about that, will be built by the media. It's not the state's job. The state should not come in because then questions of control start.
No, you can influence or encourage.
Look, I mean, I see my job as talking honestly to you and your colleagues, and to explain where we stand. It is really your job to interpret it the way you want and to take it where you want.
Right. Dr. Zab, your policy also mentions new technologies like artificial intelligence and all. Yeah. Do you think that we have the kind of infrastructure that is needed?
We are behind, and we really need to work on this very, very quickly.
And who is going to do that?
The state is, the private sector is involved.
Which sector, which department?
No, actually, for instance, cybersecurity, which is a key sort of concern for me. There's a lot of work going on. A lot of it, you know, is happening in different departments. But, you know, you now have AI, quantum, all this stuff. We are behind, and we really need to catch up.
Quantum computing.
Yeah, we really need to catch up.
And our neighbor, the country that we keep on comparing ourselves to, is colonizing space. And we don't seem to be actually moving.
Yeah,
in
our
that
position
direction.
is space should not be militarized, frankly, but all of these investments, I'm not talking
but
militarization.
you have to send people over there at least.
Yeah, but I think we have to prioritize. We're a country with scarce resources, but prioritize and then push and implement. This policy, frankly, a lot of people, and I'm very grateful, a lot of people have commended this. If this policy remains in your hand without any implementation, I'd be very depressed and disappointed, man.
Right. I talk about space because then satellites actually come in and they can actually influence your safety as well.
I mean, I think there's a lot to be done.
Right. Regarding regional integration and everything, you rightly have pointed out about economic, security and geoeconomics. The question right now is, on one side we have a country called Afghanistan, which seems to be badly battered and sanctioned. On the other side, we have this impulsive regime in India that seems to not play ball.
Yeah.
So how are you going to interconnect with all that?
Well, it's a suboptimal situation, but visions are not, hostage to what there is today.
Yeah.
It is how we approach it. So Central Asia was closed for us for 75 years.
Yeah.
Since last year, we've had more trade and transit agreements with them than ever before. Why? That's the geoeconomic connectivity vision. Why do we want peace in Afghanistan? Multiple reasons. One of them is we want a corridor of stability.
Right.
Why have we said that we want peace with India, but without compromising on our vital national security interests, right? So if there's an opening tomorrow, if they understand that they have to do right by Kashmiris and move forward, we've always said we're open.
And I totally get when you say that visions are there for permanently and they're going to help us choose direction. But I wanted you to actually operationalize that. How do you go about it? India?
No, but look, India, earlier last year, you saw that now it's public, that there was some conversation. Why was that conversation happening?
In our country or there?
No, wherever it was. No. The conversation between Pakistan and India.
Yeah.
There were reports and whatever. They reached out to us. They said they wanted to talk. If we are on a geoeconomic model, we'll test it. We want to see whether they are sincere or not. Are they worried about their people or not? Unfortunately, it turns out not only are they not worried, they're worried about taking down every single one who doesn't use the slogan that RSS does. It's a very unfortunate situation.
Right. And at that time, Kashmir is also there, which is brewing.
Absolutely.
And then India refuses to talk to us.
Yeah. So suboptimal.
So our vision is going to wait as long as Modi is there?
I don't know about that. All I can tell you is that eastern flank is not the only thing Pakistan lives off. There is CPEC north-south. Our blue economy has not been explored. We need to do much more there. There's westward connectivity. Our trains are now going to Turkey. Our trucks are now going to Turkey. So there's a lot else that we can do. But ideally, yes, South Asia should be connected.
Afghanistan.
What about it?
It is highly sanctioned. If you remember, Pakistan wanted to have this Iran-Pakistan pipeline.
Yeah.
It was highly sanctioned.
Yeah.
We could never do it.
Yeah.
So how do you actually move forward in Afghanistan?
Well, we don't choose the region we live in, right?
Yeah.
So we've got to do the best we can with what we have. There is no, despite sanctions, there's no restriction on business to business, private sector, connectivity. So there are avenues, but yes, I mean, ideally we would want the country to open up so that there could be normal business, normal trade and normal movement forward.
You mentioned blue economy as well, but before that you mentioned not only CPEC, but also Central Asia. Tell me, how do you actually go about this? Do you think that Central Asia is ready? And what are we going to trade? How we are going to approach the matter?
No, I think that's a wrong question. You've got to create connectivity windows.
Okay.
And then whatever is suitable for the private sector, they will trade. Wherever investment should flow, given the economics of it, it will flow. It's not only Central Asia. You reach Moscow, Eurasia, that's the landmass that's going to be the future. That's
right.
So
but you create only roads and infrastructure and then allow the entirety of the business community.
I mean, all of Central Asia wants to use our port to get their merchandise across to the world and get whatever they need.
They do?
Think about the potential there.
Right.
Energy, yeah, absolutely. That's why all these agreements have come about.
Right. And which agreements are you talking about?
Trade transit agreements, Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, rail, road. I mean, there's tons going on.
Because you have mentioned economy multiple times, and of course this policy is actually based on that. how do you actually diversify our economic, portfolio? Because since I was a kid, we have been actually looking at only 4 items that we have been exporting.
That's a question for our Commerce Minister. He would be able to tell you the nuts and bolts of it. As far as I'm concerned, from where we sit, that is the priority. They have their plans and strategies, and they implement it, and essentially working together in coordination with us, we follow and make sure that we are going where we're going.
While we are talking, I can see that my team and your team are both uncomfortable. We have overshot the time.
Thank you.
But very quickly, one last thing. What is the biggest lesson and biggest message coming out of this document and your experience so far?
One, we exaggerate the difficulty in getting consensus in Pakistan's system. Actually, I'll tell you, in the last 2.5 years or whatever that I've been here, I've not had a single problem in terms of whole of government, federal, otherwise. So I think that's. But the real thing to put here is, don't underestimate the message that economic security at the core gives to Pakistanis and to the world. This is a country that's been so unfairly called a garrison state and this state and that state. This is the real Pakistan.
Right.
And show me how many countries in the world have been confident enough to say this, write it down, and put it out for the world to see.
Right. Dr. Moeed, Yusuf,
Thank you very much. Such a pleasure. Thank you.
Right, viewers, you have listened to Dr. Moeed Yusuf. Pakistan's national security policy is before you. And now what we have to keep on doing is keep on following up and see how it is being implemented. We are told that there are KPIs, there is a performance index, there are umpteen other methods to keep on checking. So we'll keep on updating you on this as well. And meanwhile, let us also hope that the rough neighborhood we are in also stabilizes so that we can really fulfill this important policy. This was today's program. Thank you very much for watching. Take care.
Well, you saw the interview, and I don't know about all our viewers, but I was hooked. And such an interview actually comes out when you ask the right questions. And of course, Farrukh is an expert at that. So kudos to you, Farrukh. And it's so great to have Moeed Yusuf with us and take the time out also to give us his stance and, of course, talk about the national security policy, which is a very important document. But I also want to ask you, Farrukh, as interviewing someone who's representing the government stance at this important moment, what is your analysis after speaking to Moeed Yusuf as to how much of a grip the government has on the current issues which require this policy in the first place, the kind of input that has been put into this document, and the direction that they foresee Pakistan in the future?
Right. I think to begin with, one has to actually look at the man who is actually delivering it. And frankly, by the very existence of this policy, there's already this message that we have a closer, a person who is a doer in charge, right? Because as I pointed out in the interview as well, I have asked 4 previous national security advisors, and last time I interviewed Dr. Moeed Yusuf as well. At that time also I asked him. He was the only one who told me that we are on it and we are going to actually do it, right? That is a big thing. 74 years, just think, why is it that we never had a national security policy? There must be systemic pushback, there must be a lot of moving parts, they never aligned. So this time to actually bring it together is no mean task, right? That is one thing. But then you start reading the policy itself and you realize that there is a very clear vision. That this country is bound for greatness, and you have to understand where to start, rather than actually talking merely about. There was a time when Pakistan's think tanks only had obsession with nuclear policy and other things.
Right.
But finally, the nucleus of our society, the common man on the street, is being talked about. And if his well-being is taken care of, the country becomes already a welfare state and a progressing state. So I think that this policy in itself, and then the man who's there, they already promise a lot.
All right, Faisal, you've also gone through the policy and you heard the interview as well. And there's so many difficult and complex issues that have been discussed and touched upon, such as the issues of diversity, of course, the issues of the kind of nuances that exist within the definition of economic security, how to sort of broaden the whole vision forward when we talk about internal and external security threats to Pakistan. With all of these conversations going about and these issues actually addressed in the policy, do you see that these complex issues that the policy actually speaks about are going to move towards a direction in terms of when we move to implementing the document to a change in the way things are currently working?
Sana, first of all, it was an excellent interview, and I think we need to give 10 out of 10 to our senior Farrukh Bhai.
Absolutely.
And I think it was
I'm not a senior Farrukh Bhai. I'm your colleague. Okay.
It was an excellent interview, and it was much needed one. But looking at the national security policy, I think to me, how I see it, there is an analysis called SWOT analysis. I think somebody has conducted an excellent SWOT analysis of every department of Pakistan and every field of Pakistan, and they have searched for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats to Pakistan, and they have come up with an excellent policy. And as earlier Farrukh Bhai was mentioned even in the interview as well, the only problem is that it's continuity. It should be continued. And a very important thing which was highlighted within the interview was of media persons. I mean, we have a responsibility to play as well. We have a positive role to play as well in this. Why? Because I think NSA rightly pointed out that media persons, they need to go through the policy first before they do a commentary on it or before they ask any questions about it. Before raising any questions, they need to read it, and I think it's our responsibility to do that. 10 out of 10 for NSA as well for coming up with such an initiative. And as Farrukh earlier mentioned, 74 years we were without a policy, a national security policy.
It's actually surprising that we say that now. Yeah. We didn't have one for 74 years.
And I think to me a clear direction has been shown by the government where we are heading towards. I mean, we know that world is considering us being aligned with the Chinese, but our NSA's national security policy, it clearly tells that though we have our economic needs and we being very good friends with China, we have CPEC at a priority, but there are different economic zones in which Pakistan wants to invite all of the Western world, and whoever wants to invest in Pakistan, they will be welcomed. And I think it's an excellent approach towards our foreign policy as well. And to me, I was highly impressed by this work.
And another very important aspect that was highlighted was, of course, the fact that there is an allowance that is being given more than just the annual review, that when there is a government change, they can actually review the document and propose the changes. But Farrukh, is that also not a potential problem when we look at how any new government who comes in can fundamentally sort of change it? Mr. Moeed, Yusuf seems very confident that the fundamental aspects or the essence of the document will not be changed.
Right. Before I do that, let me thank you both for your kind words. And I think that I'm really grateful. You have always been full of support. Regarding what you were asking, there are two aspects which are very important. Remember that I was talking about media's role as well. So I will be expanding on that a bit later.
Okay, yeah.
But given that you're talking about a new government coming and changing it, there are two important things to bear in mind. One, democracies are usually messy. They do have this problem of uncertainty. A new government comes in, it might review it, and then that government can itself fail, right? That also happens in democracies. But on the other side, look at the basic building blocks of this policy. Where does it start? Does it start on moon? No, it doesn't. It starts with the common man on the street. So if a new democratically elected government comes, it is going to say, okay, from today onwards, the welfare of the common man is not the key priority. That won't happen, right? And I totally get what he is saying. My problem is something else. You know, why do we need a national security policy? Because there was this weaponization of the idea of national security by whom? By the media pundits. You know, what was happening yesterday, all this talk about the defense minister saying this and something else happening and all that. Because your media and your pundits are A, very ambitious, and B, they actually want to play elements against each other so that they get more space, and in doing that, they end up destroying the entire organogram of the state. Right? So, first time, this weaponization is taken away from them by defining the contours of national security. When that happens, how do you, well, let me be honest, full credit to the Prime Minister, who actually totally stood by Dr. Moeed Yusuf, but then also hats off to the armed forces chiefs who were there today. I mean, in the past, you remember there used to be this talk that army chief met the Prime Minister, the former Prime Minister, and he was not wearing his cap, and that is because he wanted to avoid the salute and all that. I mean, this is the quality of national discourse because of these benighted pundits in this country. So you have to actually take that power of confusion away from them, and you have to empower the people. Yeah, but tell me one thing. You have fought terrorism for 20 years, and none of these pundits could actually come on television and tell you that suicide bombing is wrong because as per Islam and Quran, suicide itself is haram. None of them did that. Just imagine the kind of confusion these people have created and could have continued to create had our state not actually started working together and coming up with such documents. So I think all these elements need our salutation, and we should be supporting the effort.
Just a 30
yes,
second
Faisal, yes, you can add to that. And I also want to ask you another question with regards to what we're speaking about with media's responsibility and capacity building, as mentioned in the interview as well. But doesn't that sort of also extend to all the different institutions as well, particularly when we speak about how this policy is going to be implemented and followed by all of these institutions? So that sort of capacity building or responsibility then also seems to be a necessary requirement in all of the institutions. How are we going to ensure that?
Sana, very good question, and I think I'll address that first. I think it's a responsibility of all of the organizations, all of the institutions working within Pakistan. They need to, of course, go along with the directions given by the national security policy. And I think the biggest role that is going to be played by the administration, the local administration on the ground as well, because we are talking about the people, and we should not be forgetting that around 65 to 70% of the population of Pakistan is still living in the rural areas of Pakistan, and them rural areas, of course, the local administration plays a key role in there. And I think all of the institutions, they need to put excellent efforts to make sure that it is implemented. I just wanted to include one more thing about media. Of course, we should be working with the utmost responsibility, because this belongs to us as well. Why? Because we, at the end, we are the human beings, and we should not be forgetting that. And
we're going to benefit from that.
We are going to get the benefit out of it as well.
Do you want me to
Farrukh,
disabuse you of all this optimism? Let me ask you a counter question. Sana, let me ask you, and then Faisal also. How many children's channels do you have in this country?
None.
None?
None, maybe.
How many documentary channels do we have?
None.
None? Okay, how many news channels do we have?
Plenty.
50 plus.
50 plus.
Does it tell you that something
And
has
there is
gone
a race
awry?
going on.
No, something has gone awry. because this is being used not
sell.
as the medium to dispense knowledge, but to actually control power.
Exactly.
So you have to realize that something is wrong and it has to be corrected, and state will have to do something.
Exactly. And I wanted to highlight in the interview, of course, the NSA was saying that media itself would mend itself. But to me, I think here state needs to play a role as well. State needs to come up with different ideas.
Yeah, you can look at me now because we are on the broader screen. Please go ahead.
And state obviously need to put extra efforts towards mending Pakistan's media stance and educational channels. We know that in recent times, of course, when the schools were shut, of course, the Ministry of Information came up with the excellent idea of schooling people who were sitting at home because of schools were shut.
And
I think these sort of ideas, they
Yes.
need to be
We're
put.
almost out of time. Farrukh, you want to add something?
And hate speech. Hate speech, related to hate speech, government has defined that nobody would be allowed hate speech.
Yeah,
in Pakistan.
but we did that also in the National Action Plan.
Yeah.
The problem
Yeah.
right now is how to implement it and how
Exactly.
to define it. Let us hope in coming days we see some kind of progress.
Absolutely, and that is what the NSA also spoke about, that the real work begins now when we actually implement this policy and translate this vision into a reality. And that is the real hope, and we hope we can achieve that. Thank you so much for watching the debate. Have a nice weekend. See you on Monday.